Reyna Angelica Marroquin was born in 1941 in El Salvador, a country located in Central America. She lived with her mother and with whom she got along very well and had a great mother-daughter relationship. Despite being very poor and living in a very humble life, she enjoyed living in El Salvador and considered herself a happy person. In 1966, she got married and was very happy with their life together. However, she later found out that her husband had a mistress who was pregnant. Very sad, Reyna just wanted to run far away and forget about it all, so she decided that she would move to the United States, where she would start a new life. She landed in New York and started working as a nanny, but she didn't stay long in that job. Unemployed and with nowhere to go, she started to live in a house that took in helpless women. As she didn't know how to speak the language of the country fluently, she began to attend English classes to adapt better. She became very friendly with her teacher, who was also from El Salvador, and was called Kathy Andrade. Kathy even got Reyna a job at a synthetic flower factory in the Melrose neighborhood of New York. In 1969, everything was going well in her life. Now she had a job, was improving her English, and had a friend she could count on. Reyna had also started dating, and by irony of fate, her boyfriend was married. Even though her marriage was destroyed by cheating, she didn't seem to care much about her boyfriend being married. She even told her friend that she was very happy and that her boyfriend would see her whenever he could. Despite telling her friend pretty much everything, she never said her boyfriend's name and always stated that he would leave his wife to be with her when she got pregnant. With a few months of relationship, Reyna's boyfriend rented her an apartment. In the meantime, she ended up getting pregnant. She was convinced that her boyfriend would leave his wife and stay with her. However, time passed and the man did not let go of his wife. Reyna felt very frustrated with the situation. She began to think that she would be abandoned and would have to raise her son alone. She then decided to call her boyfriend's house, and the one who answered the phone was his wife. Reyna told her everything, that she was pregnant of her husband, and that he had promised to file for a divorce so he could be with her. When Reyna's boyfriend found out about this, he was furious and said he was going to kill her. Very upset, Reyna called Kathy and said she had done something stupid. Kathy was very worried, as Reyna seemed very desperate and couldn't stop crying on the phone. She then decided to go to Reyna's apartment, but when she got there was no one there. Kathy was waiting for Reyna to show up. She was waiting for hours, and when Reyna didn't show up, she felt something was wrong. She then decided to go to the police to report Reyna's disappearance. The police showed little interest in the case, telling Kathy that Reyna had probably returned to her country of origin, and that it was very common for immigrants to do this and not notify anyone. To Kathy, this possibility seemed to make sense. As Reyna was so desperate on the phone, she could have left with the intention of running away from someone. After a few months, Kathy decided to call Reyna's mother in El Salvador, believing that Reyna might be there. However, Reyna's mother said that she didn't return to El Salvador, and she hadn't received letters from her daughter for months, and was very worried about her. As Reyna never revealed her boyfriend's identity to Kathy, she didn't know who the man was to see if Reyna was with him. Years passed and Kathy never heard from Reyna Marroquin again. On September 2, 1999, 30 years after Reyna's disappearance, the South County police received a call. A resident reported that he found a trunk in his basement, and the inside had something he believed to be a body. As the smell was very unpleasant, he decided to take the trunk out of his basement and put it in the backyard of his house until the police arrived. As soon as detectives Robert Edwards and Brian Parpin arrived at the scene, Detective Brian said the smell was so bad he almost passed out. In conversation with the owner of the house, they discovered that the man had just acquired it, and as soon as he got to the basement he felt a very strong smell. Afraid of being something toxic, he asked for the help of 3 more men to get the trunk out of his house. So when they opened it, he noticed that there was a hand in his shoe, and he quickly called the police. The officers took the trunk for analysis, and searched the entire house and the grounds around it for other bodies, but nothing was found. During the removal of the body from the trunk, it is said that the odor was so strong that everyone in the room had to wear gas masks. When removing the body, they noticed that it was completely mummified. They also noticed that it was a woman because of the clothes, but this would only be confirmed with the autopsy reports. Next to the body, they also removed the bag, but there were some belongings such as a makeup, comb, agenda, and also a pendant that was written, Patrice, Love, Uncle Phil. Several hypotheses were raised about who would be this Patrice, whose name was written on the pendant, but the police waited for the result of the autopsy so that they could start investigations. When the autopsy results came out, the news shocked the police. The victim was in the 9th month of pregnancy and was killed with 10 blows on the head caused by a blunt object. The coroner also reported the victim had gold fillets in her teeth, something that was not common in the USA, but is central in South American countries. Also according to him, the victim was around 30 years old, and her body would have been in the trunk for over 25 years. With this information, the police began to investigate and check the records of disappearance where the victim was a Latino woman, aged around 30, and her name was possibly Patrice. The police officers also passed this information on to other departments in the region to help with investigations, but there was no one in the records of missing person with this profile. The police then decided to investigate the past of the house and to discover that in the 80s, the previous owner had done a renovation in the basement. While the detectives were investigating this, the forensic experts had made a new discovery. They found a note that was loaned with the victim's belongings, and on it said, "Don't be mad, I told the truth." To investigators, this indicated that the victim was intimate with the person who had received this note, and that she was afraid of the person's reaction. The experts also found some numbers that were on the agenda that seems to have some relation to the country's immigration sector, so it asked immigration to consult those numbers. In the investigation regarding the renovation of the house, the detectives spoke with the man who could be responsible for this renovation. However, this man said he stayed in the house for a time and never did any renovations in it. He also said that a few times he went to the basement, he even saw this trunk there, but he was never interested in moving it because he believed it was just rubble. A recently graduated journalist named Oscar Corral became very interested in the case and volunteered to help the police in their investigations in exchange for information he could publish in the newspaper where he worked. He noticed something wrong with the house documents. The basement had not been built in the 80s but in the 60s, and at the time the owner of the property was a man named Howard Elkins. The detective then went to this man's house. Arriving there, they showed him the picture of the trunk and asked him if he knew anything. Very calm, he said no. The police then asked about the renovation of the house, and out of nowhere the man said that when he lived there, he had a mistress. The surprised cop started asking questions about this lover and what was her name, what was she like, hair color and ethnicity. He just said he didn't remember. The detectives found this very strange, so they asked for a sample of his DNA so they could make a comparison with the DNA of the victim's fetus. They suspected that the Howard Elkins might be the father of the child the victim was expecting. Howard was furious and kicked the detectives out of his house. But before he left, Detective Brian Parpon said he would leave, but he would come back and get him. The number that experts found on agenda and sent to the immigration department gave results, and the victim was identified. She was Reyna Angelica Marroquin, who disappeared 30 years ago. In that same directory, the experts found several phone numbers, but as it had been 30 years since she was missing, the numbers no longer belonged to the same people. However, to the police's surprise, a woman said that she knew the victim. That woman was Kathy Andrade, the same woman who 30 years ago taught Reyna English classes, and they became great friends. When the officers came to her and showed her a picture of Reyna, Kathy cried a lot and confirmed the victim's identity. She told the police that before she disappeared, Reyna called her crying and seemed to be desperate, saying that she had done something stupid and that her boyfriend would never leave his wife to be with her. She also said that she was very worried about Reyna and decided to go to her apartment, but when she got there, Reyna was gone, but she didn't take anything from the apartment. Everything remained in the same place, and even the food that Reyna prepared was too hot, and that she even went to the police to report the disappearance, but the police did not give much importance. With this information, the detectives connected the dots. Reyna was pregnant with a man who was married, and Howard Elkins said he had a mistress 30 years ago. And to top it off, the police discovered that he once owned a synthetic flower factory in Marroquin, the same factory Reyna worked at before she disappeared. For the detectives, these facts were not just coincidence. For them, the case was practically solved, and the culprit was undoubtedly Howard Elkins. When the officers were ready to go after Howard Elkins, the department received a call from his wife, saying that Howard had disappeared. The cops thought he had run away, so they started searching the area to locate him. A few hours later, a friend of Howard's called saying he was dead. Howard Elkins had taken his own life by shooting himself in the head in the backseat of a vehicle in his friend's garage. The officers then collected Howard's DNA and compared it to that of the fetus, which gave almost 100% compatibility. Howard Elkins was the father of this baby. The police hypothesis was that after killing Reyna and placing her body in the trunk, Howard threw her into the sea, but as the trunk was too heavy and he couldn't ask for anyone's help, he decided to leave the trunk in the basement of his home. In 2000, journalist Oscar Corral took it upon himself to go to El Salvador to locate Reyna's family and tell them what had happened to her. After a few days of searching, he managed to locate her mother and gave her the sad news about her daughter. According to Oscar, he wanted Reyna's mother to know what happened to her, and that as sad as the news was, at least she would know the truth. Well guys, so that's it. Thanks for watching to the end. Best wishes, and I see you next time.